I'd sit this one out, Cap.
I don't see how I can.
These guys come from legend. They're basically gods.
There's only one God, ma'am. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is a physicist who began researching altered states of consciousness with Bob Monroe at Monroe Laboratories in the early 1970s. These early drug-free consciousness pioneers helped design experiments, develop the technology for creating specific altered states, and were the main subjects of study all at the same time. He has been a serious explorer of the frontiers of reality, mind, consciousness, and psychic phenomena for the last 40 years and continuing. In 2003, he published the My Big Toe trilogy, which represents the results and conclusions of his scientific exploration of the nature of existence. The MBT reality model explains metaphysics, spirituality, love, and human purpose at the most fundamental level, provides a complete theory of consciousness, and solves the outstanding fundamental physics problems of our time, deriving both relativity theory and quantum mechanics from first principles, something traditional physics cannot yet do. Welcome back to the show, Tom Campbell.
Thank you, Matt. Glad to be here.
I'm so excited to have you back. I think I had you almost about a year ago, and your work has come up over and over again because it's super deep, it's super fascinating. Simulation theory and that whole thing is starting to blow up, and you're one of the leaders in that. Do you want to give the listeners who might not be familiar with your work a little bit about your background? I shared that bio. You've been doing this for a long time. So maybe you can just give a brief intro and we'll dive right in.
Okay. I have a hard time doing anything briefly, but I'll give it a try. We'll see how brief I can make it. I started understanding that reality was bigger than what I had been taught in physics class when I was in graduate school, and I started with a TM meditation process. And I went to TM because it was only $25 for students, and it promised that you could get by on less sleep. And I was a graduate student at the time, and less sleep is what I needed because there was just way too much to do and too little time to do it in. So I learned TM, and about 2 months in to TM, I found that I could debug computer code in my mind much more accurately and much more quickly than I could if I was actually looking at the code. Those were in the bad old days when computer code was on punch cards, and punch cards were in long cardboard boxes. And I had maybe 10,000 cards. Every one you have to punch at a key punch. And sometimes the holes were a little off and, they wouldn't read right. So there was lots of things besides just the code that could mangle your program. And in those days, you only got maybe 1 or 2 runs a week on a university-owned computer. There was one computer there were no PCs or, computers that were easily at hand. You got in a long line in the queue, and maybe a week may go by, and you may not even get a run on your program in a week. So you can imagine debugging was really, really important. If you're only going to get 1 or 2 runs in a week, you don't want to waste them because you left a comma off, behind a statement. So debugging was a very important thing, unlike today where the debugging is done in seconds with code, and it's a very quick process. So the ability to debug code, I just brought the code up in my mind, and all the lines that had faults in them turned red. And I just noted the lines because I had written all the code, so I knew all the lines intimately. And I'd go check those out, and sure enough, those lines had errors. And suddenly what took me and most everybody else months to do, I could do in a half a day. And that was even better than not needing more sleep. That was getting the work done, a lot faster and a lot smarter. So then I realized that reality was much bigger than what I thought, because that kind of went around all the concepts I had of reality as a physicist at that time. So it was, probably a couple of years after that, I get out of graduate school, I take a job And I run into Bob Monroe's book, Journeys Out of the Body. Actually, my boss gave it to me. So we find out that Bob only lives 45 minutes away from where we were. So we made arrangements to go out and meet him. And he had just built a lab. And it was one of those, build it and they will come. He had no idea what he was going to do with this lab. He didn't have any people to work in it. It was just build a lab and they will come. He built it and we came. And I started working with Bob, just building equipment for his lab to begin with, and using myself as a guinea pig for the things that he had, which was he had some sounds, different sound things that you would listen to, and relaxation exercises and other things that would help. So the deal I made with Bob is, I'll be your scientist for free, and you teach me how to go out of body like you do, because if I don't experience it, it's not real to me. So he agreed, and myself and another guy, Dennis Menerick, who was also worked same place I did, came up with me in the same group. We started going like 15 hours a week to Bob Monroe's. It was all like a half-time job. And we were out there every evening after work and on weekends. And we brought our families out there. And Bob was good on his word. He taught us how to go out of body to where we could go out of body whenever we wanted to on demand. And what I wanted to do as a physicist was understand it. How does it work? What is it? What is an out-of-body state? Where is this reality? What is the reality? Where is it? How is it? What good is it? What can you do in it? What can't you do in it? How's it connected to our reality? What's it have to do with consciousness? What is consciousness? So that's what physicists do. They try to model reality. They try to understand how the world works. And here I was, a physicist that only knew a small fraction of what was in our reality. And now I've got this other whole doorway open to me, and I wanted to explore it. So that was my job. I was kind of theoretician of the group, trying to figure out what it was and how did it work. Dennis, he was an electrical engineer, so he worked on building equipment and progressing down his own path with it. So that was back in the very early 70s, like 1970, 71, 72. And we did that with Bob Monroe for probably 7, 8 years, putting in this half-time job. So you're looking at thousands of hours, spent in the lab with Bob Monroe as the teacher. And I gained a little bit of understanding about how it all worked. I knew it had something to do with growing up, with getting rid of ego and fear, becoming love. All that started to become obvious in time, that was a part of it. It wasn't something you did, it was something you had to be. That was the main difference. It's not in the doing, it's in the being is what's important. So anyway, and then I'll make the story a lot shorter for the rest of it. So for the next 35 or 40 years, I'm working on it. I'm spending my time doing research in the out-of-body state. I wanted to understand consciousness, its limitations, how did it work, and what it was. And the best way to do that is doing experiments inside, consciousness. If you study consciousness from the outside, like, study somebody else's consciousness or even your own in meditation, you don't get very far. But if you can travel around within consciousness, what I call the larger consciousness system, then you can actually do research there. You can do things and they have effects here, and then you can do them again and see if the effects are consistent and what are the variables, and if you change this variable, how does that affect the change of what happens here? And it's just a lot of painstaking research, trial and error, trying to figure out how this thing worked. So in 2003, I thought I had some idea how it worked, and I wanted to write it down. And I wanted to do that because writing it down forces you to be clear in your thinking. Most of us, when we think, are very fuzzy in our thinking. We're not too exact, but when you have to write it down, there's no such thing as a fuzzy sentence. Your sentence says something or it doesn't. It's a very clear and precise instrument if you write in decent, whatever your language is, in my case, decent English. So it forces clarity. And I found I had all kinds of holes in my thinking, you know, in my ideas, and things that were incomplete and things I really didn't understand, because when I tried to write them down, it was like, well, I really don't know what I'm talking about here. You know, it's all hypothetical, and you know, I need to do some more work. So writing the books was about a 5-year process. And in that 5-year process, I did a lot of learning, and again, a lot of exploring and researching. And then I thought that I understood it well enough to write these books. I thought maybe after a while that I'd have enough material for a book, and then I thought I'd have material for more than a book, and pretty soon I had so much material I had to break it into 3 pieces. Otherwise, I would have had a book with 1,000 pages in it, which would have been too hard for anybody to lift off the shelf. So I broke it, and that's why I ended up with a trilogy. Then it had been published for about a year or so, and what it is a model of consciousness, was what it was. It was a scientific model of consciousness that was the results and conclusions of all of those years that I spent trying to figure it out. So about a year or two after I publish it, I get some aha moments that say, this very same principles, ideas, and concepts that I have based my theory of consciousness on also explain quantum mechanics. Oh my God, you know, so I looked at it. I mean, I'm a physicist. I should have gotten that right away, but I missed it entirely. And then when I finally got it, I said, well, look, it's exactly the same thing. The same thing I'm using to explain how consciousness works explains why quantum mechanics works, you know, why particles should be probability distributions, which is a big mystery in physics. And then I started thinking, well, if I can explain quantum mechanics and physicists can't explain quantum mechanics, then what about the other big mysteries in science? And immediately jumped up relativity. Relativity theory, like quantum mechanics, is based on an assumption that nobody understands how it could be that way. With quantum mechanics, the assumption is that particles are probability distributions. You know, what's that mean? Particles are probability distributions. See, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but with that assumption, you can compute correct answers with quantum mechanics. But the assumption itself is a mystery, why that should be true. In relativity, the mystical assumption there is the velocity of light is a constant. Why should it be a constant? Nothing else has a constant velocity like that. Everything else, velocities are additive. You know, if you have the source moving, then the light from the source should be moving not only at its speed, but also the speed that it gets from the moving source. But light isn't like that. Doesn't matter how its source is moving. It always goes exactly the same speed. You know, c is the letter we denote speed of light with. So why is c a constant? Well, again, just like in quantum mechanics, if you make that assumption that c is a constant, oh, well, now you can derive relativity theory. It's just based on that fact as its fundamental, you know, that's the fundamental fact in relativity. And physicists had no idea why c should be a constant. And my consciousness theory was screaming the answer. It said, of course, c has to be a constant, couldn't be anything else. Look, it falls right out of the virtual reality. And virtual reality, or I should say that our reality is information-based. That's another way of saying virtual reality. Was a fundamental tenet of my consciousness theory. So I ended up realizing that I could do better physics, and after that, I started looking at all of the paradoxes in physics, the things that physicists know because experimentally they verified it's like that, but don't know why. There's a lot of paradoxes in physics. You know, some of the more obvious ones are, you know, where did the Big Bang come from? If our whole universe is all there is of reality, and our whole universe evolved from a Big Bang that was a ball of plasma at high temperature and high pressure, where did that ball of plasma come from? Didn't come from our universe because our universe hadn't evolved yet, you see. So it had to come from outside of our universe, but that doesn't really make sense. So it's another one of these paradoxes. And physics is littered with these kinds of paradoxes, some big like that in cosmology, some small things. But anyway, I found out that consciousness theory derived a more complete physics. And that was really a good thing. I was really, I grinned about that for probably a couple of months, because I'm a physicist, and I saw the two coming together. I had known that they must come together somehow, but I didn't really know how before that. And the reason I say that is I knew that consciousness was fundamental. My studies in consciousness told me consciousness is fundamental. Physical reality is secondary. It's a product of consciousness. And you can get that just from experimenting with your consciousness. That's a fact. Well, so I knew that physics had to come from consciousness in some way. I just didn't know that it was that easy, that it was that obvious. It was just sitting there in front of me. And then when I saw it, it was just another verification that the consciousness theory was good theory, because it indeed could explain quantum mechanics and relativity, which is what Einstein called a TOE. A theory of everything was a theory that could explain both quantum mechanics and relativity. Well, there it was, and they both fall right out of consciousness. And the physicists, Einstein included, knew that relativity and quantum mechanics were both just parts of something bigger, but they didn't know what that bigger thing was. As it turns out, that bigger thing is consciousness, you see? So that kind of ties it all together. So then things like consciousness is not a strange thing. There is no hard problem there. Consciousness is not created by brains. Consciousness is more fundamental than the physical. So that kind of opened up a whole new way of looking at life. So the next thing I did was say, well, if this is the case, maybe I can come up with some quantum mechanics experiments that help verify this theory of mine. And I did. And I came up with a set of, actually it's like 17 or 18 experiments, but it boils down into about five different fundamental experiments. So I have these 5 experiments, and I had them crowdfunded. We did a Kickstarter program last May, and pulled in about $236,000 to do the experiments. We're in the process of doing that. We're looking for physicists and institutions, that will take that on. We've built up a nonprofit called CUSAC, Center for the Unification of Consciousness and Science. So anyway, we've just been working hard now at trying to get these experiments done and have some physical scientific hard evidence that reality is this way. And I think we will be successful when we get those done. So that's coming in the next year or so. So that's kind of from the beginning all the way up to what's happening now. What's happening now is we've got these quantum mechanics experiments that hopefully in the next year we will get those completed and done and be publishing the results. So that's kind of who I am and where I started. And I guess there's one other thing that I should say. I mentioned in the beginning that you find out when you travel this road that it's really not about doing, it's about being. And you begin to change going down this path. And as you grow up, as your reality expands, as all the things, well, I shouldn't say all the things, but many of the things that people call paranormal just become normal, because within the consciousness viewpoint, they're just normal things. They only are paranormal or kind of, beyond normal, above normal, if you have a materialistic viewpoint. Then they're not normal at all. They're paranormal. But if you understand consciousness, they're just normal. And when you live in a larger reality and you have a deeper understanding of the way things work, it just naturally brings you to a personal growth where you understand that what's important is very fundamental choices that you make your choices with love, with caring. It has to be about other, not about self. And that being self-centered, gimme, me, oh, what do I want? What can I get? And how can I keep it? When your life centers around those kinds of things, your life is unsatisfying and it's generally unpleasant. And there's a lot of fear and a lot of pain. And my consciousness research kind of also evolved not only the nature of consciousness, but what we're doing here, who we are, why we're here, and what is this physical reality? You know, where did it come from, and why is it here, and why are we in it? And when you answer all those questions, you know, I could probably talk for 6 hours just on those questions, but to come to the bottom line of it, we're here to grow up, to become love. That's why we're here. We're here to make choices, and by those choices, we lower the entropy of our consciousness, which means we have spiritual growth. We begin to care about other more than ourselves. We become love. So it's not about acting. It's not about acting kind or acting loving. It's about being kind and being loving.
So, judging from all the leaks that we have and judging from the Avengers Endgame trailer, we're going to get the good old Captain America back that we know and love. Goodbye to the Nomad Captain America. So now back to the white suits. If you watched the video I did where we saw the art of the Avengers wearing these white suits, you'll know that I think, and I think mostly everybody thinks, that these suits are designed for the Avengers going inside of the quantum realm. The reason we think this is because these all-white suits look very similar to the suit that Dr. Hank Pym wore when he went inside of the quantum realm. Right now, it is currently unknown why the Avengers will head inside of the quantum realm, but it's widely believed that it will be for time travel. Of course, this goes back to the post-credit scene of Ant-Man and the Wasp, where right before Scott is about to go back inside of the quantum realm, Janet tells him to look out for time vortexes. And of course, Scott gets stuck inside, and it is believed the only way he gets out is to actually go through one of the time vortexes. It's believed that the Avengers will travel back in time so they can change the events of the past to prevent Thanos from getting a hold of all the Infinity Stones and performing the snap. And the quantum realm is most likely the key to this. So again, these suits look very much like the suit that Dr. Hank Pym wore to go inside of the quantum realm. We saw these leaked suits before, and now this new Lego leak backs up these leaks and the fact that the Avengers will need some sort of suit to go inside of the quantum realm.
Look, a shooting star, make a wish!
Oh no.
Hurry! The door is slowly closing!
Oh, the pain. It's getting so cold.
Emmett, what are you doing?
Hooray!
See, that wasn't so bad. Nothing got in. Ah! Something got in!
I'm General Mayhem. Bring me your fiercest leader.
Lucy!
Emmett!
This is all my fault. Hang on to your fronds, Planny. We're going to save Lucy. Don't you tell me to smash asteroids!
You mind if I save your life?
Not at all.
Who are you?
The name's Rex Dangervest.
Galaxy defending archaeologist, cowboy, and raptor trainer.
I don't get it.